Good Monday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a great weekend. Browns less than a week away from the first practice down in West Virginia at Greenbrier. That'll be Saturday. Guys will report to Berea this week. First the rookies, then the veterans. Along those lines, Nick Wright from FS1's First Things First on what he's thinking could be things that hold the Browns back this year.
My concern for the Browns, in addition to the fact I'm not sure how great of a coach Stefanski is very simple on, I don't know how much the essentially 2 years out of football, plus the awful off-field stuff that follows Deshaun and that he carries with him, take any of the other facets of it aside, all of that, it wouldn't be outrageous to say he's not going to be the same guy. That the guy he was 3 years ago in Houston, that player's gone. And they have no path forward other than him being awesome. And I know he was better in those last two games. I just don't know if Deshaun Watson's ever going to be awesome again. And if he's not, I don't know in that division what real chance they have.
With that, let's welcome in Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Jeff, I'd push back, and again, Nick Wright, got to start with Colin Cowherd, so this is right out of the Colin Cowherd playbook. 27-year-old guy entering the prime of his career. The 2 years off weren't because of injury, so I'm not quite sure why he wouldn't get back to the guy that he was. Aside from that, he doesn't have to be. If he's a top 10 quarterback, they're a playoff team fighting to go advance in the AFC playoffs.
Yeah, I think you hit on the first point there, which is, crucial. This is not a guy that came back from a debilitating injury, and there was a question of whether or not he was ever going to be able to take a football field again. And obviously, a very different path here in everything that Deshaun Watson has gone through. And we had talked about this last year. When he did come back, where was he going to be as far as what he felt, the way he was viewed, his persona. But I think we've gone pretty good to get past that. I mean, if you had told us a year ago that Deshaun Watson was hosting a 7-on-7 high school camp, we would have been like, what in the world is this guy thinking right now? But obviously, his thinking there is that his standing within the community, as being the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns is probably viewed a lot better now today than it was one calendar year ago. As far as what he's going to play with, he's going to play with probably a better receiving core this year than he ever had in his time down with the Houston Texans. He's going to play behind an offensive line that was better than any offensive line he ever had in his time down in the Houston Texans. He's got a running back that's better than he ever had in his time down with the Houston Texans. He has a coach that most likely is going to be highly motivated by ownership to make sure that he succeeds. Is the time away a factor? It could be, in the beginning when we saw him play last year when he first got back, obviously you saw there was some rust. What we're seeing, and granted it's limited, and I doubt anybody is, firing up, videos of a missed throw that Deshaun Watson made and putting it out through their own social medias. Obviously all of it's made to make Deshaun, look in a positive light, like, his game is back to where it was. But for me, I don't understand why we assume it's just not going to be there. And look, and I agree with you, of course, does he have to be one of the five best quarterbacks in the NFL for the Browns to succeed? I don't think so, because I think, the offense, literally, again, we're talking about, who's going to be running back number 2 or who's going to be maybe running back number 3. We don't really have any other questions on the offensive side of the ball. And I think we all feel real good about all the acquisitions that were made to improve the defense, starting with, of course, new defense coordinator, all the other talent. This roster is a really, really solid roster. I think Deshaun Watson just has to go out there, and if he can't be the Deshaun Watson that we all grew accustomed to, or even the 2020 version, and let's be honest, I doubt he'll ever be the 2020 version again. But if he's a quarterback that doesn't throw interceptions and throws for a high completion percentage, this is a team that's going to go to the playoffs.
Yeah, and if he is in the top 5, this is a team that's challenging to go to the Super Bowl because you get elite quarterback play with what you have around it. It's pretty good. All right, this is from ESPN. They continued their series polling executives, coaches, scouts, ranking the different position groups. Today it's the quarterbacks, top 10 quarterbacks from ESPN. Mahomes 1, Burrow 2, Allen 3. They go Aaron Rodgers 4. You see Herbert, Hurts, Jackson. They go Stafford 10, Prescott 9. Honorable mention. The first one mentioned is Deshaun Watson. NFL quarterbacks coach, keeping him out of the top 10 feels wrong. He's too good, but putting him in the top 10 feels wrong based on the play last year, lack of play the last 2 seasons. NFC offensive coach, I saw improvement over the last 2 games, and I think he'll be fine in that system. He's still, to me, when he's right, a top 5 passer. He needs time on task. I'm going to err on the side of the executive scouts and coaches rather than Nick Wright as far as how close he is to being the Deshaun Watson that he was when he played with the Texans. And this sounds like they think he's going to be close to that, if not that.
Well, I'll be honest. The number 11 overall for me, that's that's probably the highest. I mean, and a lot of people have done these polls. Obviously, this is the time of year, the type of content that comes out, and it's probably the highest he's been. But I think a lot of it is basically saying, okay, even if he is not 2020 Deshaun Watson, and that season was so ridiculously good, it doesn't mean that he's all of a sudden a quarterback that ranks in the 20s. Even if he plays a step below that, he's still a very, very good quarterback. I love the fact that, and I guess Elijah Moore is basically just, basically sleeping in his luggage, because wherever you see Deshaun Watson showing up to work out, Elijah Moore is in tow, spending time with Amari Cooper as well. And it looks like he and Amari Cooper, there's becoming more of a relationship off the field as well as on the field, which a lot of people know, whether or not at the end of the day that, generally helps your relationship on the field. There's no way it's going to hurt your relationship on the field. And from what you can gather and what you talk to and what you hear from, players on the offense, they're all excited, and they understood what they went through last year. And even when Deshaun Watson came back, there was certainly going to be some clapping back from visiting teams. There was certainly going to be some clapping back a little bit from their own home fans. But, it's not for us to say whether or not, he has served his penance. But I think for Deshaun Watson and for the Cleveland Browns, I think they feel like, he's paid what he had to pay. Everyone views that he's going to come back. He's going to be effective. Coach Stefanski's going to alter the playbook a little bit more to things that suit what his strengths are, as far as shotgun, as far as getting him on the move a little bit more. So it's, for this ESPN ranking, I'm actually, kind of positive with it. But when you get to some of these guys, and again, yes, there was some improvement as the season went on, of course. But this is a guy that always had the skill. And again, the long layoff, sure, by all means, it was something that's going to raise some questions, but it wasn't like, it was a rotator cuff. It wasn't anything with his elbow. It was just the fact that, the first year he was off the field because it was a little bit of a cloudy situation. And then the second year, obviously, we all know what happened there. Look, he's still one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL. And for anybody to view him differently than that right now, you're jumping the gun, basically, because you don't have the proof, and you can't take the proof off the 6 games last year, late in the season. A lot of it terrible weather. It's, I think you're maybe trying to plant a flag out there and hopefully, the old, I had it first type of thing.
Yeah. And again, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. This is from Jake Trotter, who covers the Browns for ESPN.com. Browns training camp preview. And there's 4 things in this that we'll go through. Biggest question, will Deshaun Watson return to the passing leader form? Most impactful offseason addition? He goes with defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz. Question that he asks, can special teams finally be special again? It's one of the reasons that they went out and got Bubba Ventrone. The special teams definitely need to be upgraded. And then he says, training camp is a success if the Browns begin the season ready to play. And again, I think that is spot on. And to be quite frank, the Browns the last couple of years haven't begun the season ready to play, and they better this year the way the season starts. We've talked the Deshaun Watson thing to death. I agree with Jim Schwartz. that defense needs a change. It needs a personality infusion, and they're going to get it with Jim Schwartz.
Oh, there's no question about it. And look, saying that you brought in Jim Schwartz is one thing, certainly, but then you go out and all the talent that was brought in there to hopefully assist in the way this defense, which was most people thought was going to be a top 10 defense last year, and obviously fell miserably low of that mark. But now you have the talent there, and that is obviously crucial here. And Jim Schwartz is a guy who knows what he does and does it well, and he has the proof through 3 stops in the NFL to prove that he knows exactly what he is doing. Players buy in quickly when a coach has a track record like that. It's not very hard to motivate anybody. It's not very hard to coach them up. It's not very hard to say, here's the system. People aren't going to question the system because the system works, and it has worked. Various stops, whether it was Tennessee, whether it was Detroit, whether it was Buffalo, whether it was Philadelphia. Also doesn't hurt that, the Browns don't have a lot of people who walk around that building who possess a Super Bowl ring in somehow, some way. So the fact that and it's proven method and it does work, the players are excited. You see it, you hear it. They are extremely excited to play for this man. And I think they're more excited for the fact that he has a lot of faith in what these individuals can do. And he's not going to try and bog them down with scheme. He's going to, just try to let these guys go out there and play to the best of their abilities. He knows he's 3 deep at cornerback. He knows he's minimum 3 to 4 deep at edge rusher. He's got players that, should succeed within what he likes to do with his defense. It's just a question of, and as you close that out, it's just a question of how quickly they're ready to go, because it's not like last year where you went Carolina and the Jets out of the box. I mean, it's a very, very rough road these first 5 to 6 games that'll be facing the Cleveland Browns.
And I think that puts added importance on getting them ready during training. This training camp it's the most important of Kevin Stefanski's coaching career.
It also doesn't hurt that they have an extra week. It also doesn't hurt that they have an extra preseason game above everybody else. All of it fell in line for a pretty good opportunity here for this team. The question that, of course, then comes is, how much can you actually play these guys in the summer? Because that's something that everybody's always, a little bit nervous about. The last thing you want to do is have any players suffer an injury in preseason. But I think there's going to be a time where these players are going to have to get some reps. I mean, just so that they can take, obviously, the verbiage, the film work, and put it into actual, physical play on the field. But I'm excited for the defense. Obviously, all the talk here will be about Deshaun and what's going to go on with the offense, and can he return to the player he, everyone thinks he still can be. But you're definitely turning your head, and there's a major talking point, and you could talk about this defense a ton here with all the personnel that was brought in, and of course bringing in a brand new boss here, and one of the best to do it over the last almost 2 decades now in the NFL.
Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little bit more about that defense. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, Dave. This is Jerry again. I'm looking at the Browns' projected roster, and I'm seeing several defensive ends that can play defensive tackle. Do you think there'd ever be a situation where they would put 4 defensive ends on the field at the same time? The second question is, if you were the quarterback against those 4 defensive ends, would you just take a knee? Thank you very much. Bye now.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Jeff, I would not rule out anything with Jim Schwartz relative to how he's going to line up on that defensive line. Yeah, quarterbacks are not going to want to play this defensive front if they get things rolling the way we think they should.
Well, the thing is, I mean, do you look at this and you say, can the Browns go NASCAR if they want to? They most certainly can, and this team is going to have a battle to actually make this roster as the 5th defensive end. There could be a chance here where they try to stash a guy or two on the practice squad who legitimately could be members of other NFL teams' defenses. Tomlinson certainly could play in passing situations, but the problem is how much faith you're going to have in Tomlinson as far as stopping the run. If they do not make another acquisition at the defensive tackle position, you might not want to waste him on pass rep situations. But yeah, I think, with Jim Schwartz, there's going to be opportunity where he's going to try to get the more athletic guys on the field. There's no question as far as that. So you look at it and it's just the way it goes. Look, I mean, nobody's going to be scared right off the bat. Nobody's going to give up. We all know that. And a lot of quarterbacks, they see this a lot of, they see it a couple times a year because there's teams with defensive lines equivalent to what the Browns are trying to put together. So they're not too, it's not that much of an anomaly. But for the Browns in a division like this, where Joe Burrow's not the greatest at mobility, Kenny Pickett's not really the greatest at mobility in the pocket, it should give the Browns an advantage against a couple of those teams in the AFC North to be able to get after them with their pass rush, of course.
I know you've done a defensive end training camp preview for Locked On Browns podcast. Take me through what you found, what you think is going on as we head into training camp with those defensive ends.
Well, I mean, there were 2 years where there was maybe some success outside of Myles Garrett. Olivier Vernon in 29 sacks. In 29 sacks. In 21, obviously, Jadeveon Clowney had 9 sacks. But, years before, but this is the other thing is the years before, it since 2018, no defensive end had more than 5 sacks. So in 18 and 19, it was Larry Ogunjobi with 5 sacks. Last year in 2022, your second leading sacker was Taven Bryant with 3. Now you figure between, of course, Zadarius Smith and, of course, Ogbono Okoronkwo, they come in with 15 last season. So right off the bat, you're talking where the Browns' top 3 pass rushers, last season accumulated over 30 sacks. You're starting to get yourself more to the type of numbers the Philadelphia Eagles put up last year. Then you factor in second-year player Alex Wright. You factor in Isaiah McGuire, Isaiah Thomas, of course. We'll see the way it plays out between all these guys who are battling for a couple of roster spots there in that defensive end room. They're all big, 6'5", 270-pound guys. They have the ability to play against the run. They set the edge. All of them have the ability to get after the passer. There's a lot of depth to this room, and it's not like years past. And there will be the opportunity, if you want to, you can dial down some of Myles Garrett's reps that he maybe takes, second quarter, third quarter. So you hope to get 110% fresh Myles Garrett in the fourth quarter. I'm sure which was all the key of it. I mean, you look at what they did. It was Okoronkwo. Then it was the draft. Then it was the Zadarius Smith move. So they felt comfortable where they were walking out of the draft. And then came an opportunity to bring Zadarius Smith into the fold. And it was just an opportunity, obviously what they were giving up as far as monetarily what they were going to pay. That was basically just too good of an offer to refuse. So the Browns jumped all over that. So this is a room they thought was trending in the right direction and just absolutely basically, hit it with a supercharge, right after the draft by bringing in Zadarius Smith. And now this is a group that is just deep. It's flexible. There is some youth to it. It's really, really going to be a fun room. And, I'm sure Jim Schwartz is excited about it, and all Browns fans should be excited about it as well.
The other thing is you put those 3 guys on the line together, and all of their production should go up some, just because somewhere on that offensive line is going to be a guy that can't handle one of those 3, and that's Jim Schwartz.
But even if you double or triple Myles, that's great. We'll take the other 3 guys on one-on-ones, and guess what? The odds are good that those guys are going to win because they've had proven track records that they've won.
I agree, and they will make each other better as well. Those are the type of things, it's a friendly competition between them that will grow as well. All right, Browns linebackers. This is from Last Word on Sports. They say they're a gamble in 2023. Tough luck injuries. Though the team only starts 2 or 3 linebackers each week, they lost an astounding 5 to season-long injuries. No new names. Surprisingly, the Browns let more linebackers leave, 4 than they signed 1. The only new signee, Matthew Adams, primarily a special teams guy. Questionable strategy. In recent years, Browns have shown they prefer their linebackers to be small and speedy rather than big and beefy. Of the 9 Browns linebackers on the roster, only 2 weigh more than 230 pounds. You know what? We've said this before, Jeff. They are counting on, and I understand their thought process, the defensive tackle, the improvement on the interior of the defensive line, keeping the linebackers clean so their small, speedy linebackers can play sideline to sideline and downhill.
Well, the funniest thing is, you look at that written word, and it says, the Browns sometimes not even starting 3 linebackers, only starting. The Browns essentially don't really care about the linebackers. They don't. And I think essentially this is a team that says we're going to play a lot of nickel, we're going to play a lot of dime, and I think they view their linebackers more so as box safeties than they do true traditional linebackers. Big and beefy. Well, you don't need big and beefy. The Browns don't play a 3-4. And big and beefy. Well, if you're going up against the world, the Nick Chubbs of the world, big and beefy ain't going to get it done anyway because he's going to run right around you. It's a lot of talk, but you want to know what. And if you look at it the last couple of years, and we've gone over this. Yes, the Browns don't pay linebackers, so therefore you're not going to get great linebackers. They don't prioritize it very much as far as drafting them. So, but the thing is, the Browns get more from the linebacker group year in, year out than they essentially put into it. Yes, last year at times was rough, but when a running back has got a full head of steam going at you and he's already 2 yards past the line of scrimmage, it makes it very difficult to tackle him. There was no clogged lanes. Running backs very rarely had to adjust or basically find go to a cutback lane or reinvent something on the fly because they were being stuffed at the line of scrimmage. It just wasn't the way it was last year. And when you look, the Browns went out and brought in McLeod, obviously. So there is 3 safeties. They have the 3 good corners. You spent extra on edge by bringing in Zadarius Smith. If they truly felt that the problem with this defense last year was linebacker, out of all the things they did, going after Jim Schwartz, going after another safety, trading for Zadarius Smith, signing Okoronkwo, if the Browns really felt it was that big of an issue, they would have addressed it. It's plain and simple. Linebacker is really, really weird because it's becoming a position that's just devalued. And I'm not saying the entire league. There's just certain systems that devalue the linebacker position. Most likely because if it works on 1st and 10, okay, that's great. Because then I'm getting you off the field and I'm bringing on more defensive backs.
Yeah, it's a passing league. Running back has been devalued. Look at what's going on with Saquon Barkley and all that stuff. So, yes, linebacker, it isn't the 1980s and in the 1970s when people are running down your throat. They want to spread you out and pass. Linebackers, they're not as important as they were. Jeff Lloyd, Locked On Browns podcast, and I are going to step aside, take another timeout, other side of the break. Back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, plus some offensive line rankings. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, love the show. Long-time viewer, long-time caller. Do you see a scenario where the tackle from Ohio State, DeJuan Jones, is a replacement for Jed Wills or Jack Conklin? I mean, I know he was a fourth-round pick, but, he was a really damn good tackle at Ohio State. So just want to hear your thoughts. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Jeff, if he not this year, I think he's probably too raw for that. If he develops, that's probably the plan. They probably saw enough in him because the thing is first-round talent, not sure how much he really likes football. If they find out he does, he could be your right or left tackle in the future.
Oh, I mean, the other thing is you could also say to DeJuan Jones, well, how much do you like money? Because do you have any idea what left tackles and right tackles make in the NFL on their second contracts? But for a player like this, and I think you look at it and you made this move with one thing in mind. You found a guy who is this big, has good feet, obviously has the basketball background, has a wingspan that you're probably going to break a tape measure trying to get it fully done on a player like DeJuan Jones. You look at Bill Callahan and say, well, here you go. He's checks every box. He's athletic. He's big. Everything you would possibly want. He needs obviously some fine tuning. The commitment certainly. Look, I mean, none of us truly know. Well, with that, and as far as anything, and like I even said, once he put out there about his, affinity for basketball, he would have looked foolish to take it away because somebody would have said, oh, well, wait a minute, you said this back in the day. So at that point, if it's out there, you might as well run with it. He's a big ball of clay. He's athletic. He's large. I think he probably is a player that has a ceiling as high as he wants it to go. I think that the Browns, and now this is where it gets a little weird because obviously as the end of 2022 was closing down, they did re-sign Jack Conklin to a new deal. They did pick up Jed Wills' fifth-year option, but that doesn't always necessarily mean anything. The Cincinnati Bengals picked up the fifth-year option on Jonah Williams. He is not going to be their left tackle this season. So maybe, just because they picked up the option on Jed Wills, if Jed cannot get to the form they are hoping for, I'm sure they would hope to have an in-house candidate, because even if they move Jed Wills, they probably maybe have to still eat a little bit of the money, which means it would certainly help that you would have a fourth-round pick in his second year, possibly playing left tackle. I think we're going to see DeJuan Jones play left tackle and right tackle this year during the preseason. I think the ultimate goal is that he can somehow, some way, become a left tackle in the NFL. And, let's be honest, if it was significantly cheaper and he was on the same level of Jed Wills, then the Browns are going to make that move because they're going to find a way to shed some money and get equal play.
Yeah, that's the way the salary cap game works in the NFL, without question. All right, this is also from ESPN.com. Executive coaches, scouts ranking the top 10 interior offensive linemen for 2023. They go Zach Martin 1, Joe Tooney 2, Quentin Nelson 3, Jenkins from Green Bay 4. Joel Bitonio is number 5, NFC executive. Bitonio stands alone at the top for me. Difference is he can play offensive guard and match defensive lineman speed and quickness, yet has left tackle skill set and athleticism. Wyatt Teller was honorable mention in this top 10 listing, Pro Bowl offensive player. His highlight tape is one of my favorites to watch. He destroys people. He's not just as good down, in, and out as some of the others are, that being Wyatt Teller from a Pro Bowl offensive player. Joel Bitonio might be underrated just because he's a guard. Guards tend to get overlooked a little bit.
Of course. I mean, and, think about it. When anybody, ever wants to talk football, when you're going to talk positional players, and very, very way down in the totem pole is when you're going to get to the guards and the centers. Joel Bitonio quietly has probably put together a Hall of Fame resume. I'm not sure it's going to be on the caliber of Joe Thomas, where being a part of a team that never won a game didn't matter. If the Browns could maybe this year, next year, put together a couple of nice playoff runs, maybe, Joel would be held in a little bit higher esteem. Joel, and as far as the athleticism, I mean, this is a guy, played high school basketball in Los Angeles. So, I mean, you have no questions about the type of athlete that Joel Bitonio still is. Of course, probably a little more athletic back in those days. But, for the Browns, you got him in a second-round pick. Here's a guy that's been your left guard and played left tackle at times for you for going on a decade now. I mean, it's all you could ever ask for. Obadon is one of the best guards that's ever played in the NFL. If that's enough to get him to Canton, we'll see. And Wyatt Teller, I think the only thing with Wyatt is when Wyatt is injured, you notice a little slip in his play. And it's understandable, obviously. But, some players, you're going to get knocked for it anyway. If you're out there, they're going to judge you on what you're doing. You don't necessarily get an asterisk because you're dinged. So I think for, Wyatt, I think the star came – the shine came off the star a little bit over the last 2 seasons with the missed time, and then by the time he was coming back, he wasn't 100%. And again, it's understandable, but when these rankings come, those things certainly weigh into where you're going to be ranked.
All right, this is from the Bleacher Report. Players who need an impressive camp to avoid being cut for the Browns. They go with Anthony Schwartz. Because there are so many playmakers, Browns may end up having to part with somebody such as Schwartz, 22-year-old, flashed some potential over his first 2 NFL seasons. All right, this one is ridiculous, but we'll go through it anyway. David Njoku, they say. No secret the 27-year-old wanted to get a fresh start somewhere else in the past as he made it publicly known and requested a trade. Of course, Browns wanted to move. If the Browns wanted to move on from Njoku, they could first pursue a trade. Yeah, that's not going to happen. And then number 3, A.J. Green. Unlikely that Green will move into his starting role for Cleveland, which has Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson at the top of its cornerback depth chart. Also has some solid depth at the position now with rookie Cameron Mitchell in the mix as well. Jeff, there's no way David Njoku. David Njoku is more likely to be an all-pro than he is to get cut. And A.J. Green, that's an interesting one. Every time they put him in, he played well. I can't and Andrew Berry and the Browns love cornerbacks, but I do get the idea of the numbers game there.
Well, first things first, and this goes on a lot with the tight end talk. I think people just somewhere along the line have not watched David Njoku and seen what he's become as far as an inline blocker over the last couple of years. You know, the Browns specifically went out and signed a tight end in 2020. By the end of 2020, David Njoku was the better player. But in 21, David Njoku was the better player and better blocker than Austin Hooper. David Njoku was a really good blocker last year. So if you're just going by receiving, yeah, his numbers may not be by the top. Okay, I get it. But his blocking is there in spades. Anthony Schwartz. Anthony Schwartz can maybe make a saving case for himself because, wow, Anthony Schwartz was a player I loved coming out of Auburn. And when talking with a lot of draft people, what do you think the ceiling for a player like Anthony Schwartz is? Well, Marquise Goodwin. So that could maybe be the saving grace for Anthony Schwartz is he could maybe get himself back into the right frame of mind. And he's been through a lot mentally, a lot of missed time, a lot of head injuries. But that would be the type of player Anthony Schwartz could be. Obviously, the Browns would love to have one because they have Marquise Goodwin here. But I think it's kind of more of we don't think it's going to work out with Anthony. That's why we have Marquise here. A.J. Green, I don't think the Browns necessarily would cut him because I think he would come in at cornerback 5, cornerback 6, and be able to play special teams. The more intriguing thing would be, would somebody say to Andrew Berry, what would it take? And the Browns love their day 3 picks. They love to be able to have maneuverability through, during the NFL draft. Maybe somebody thinks that it's time that A.J. Green gets a little bit more of an opportunity because it's not that A.J. Green – because he's just not going to get the opportunity here. So, look, he can put in all the work he wants, but he's still at best the 4th man here among cornerbacks. So, for A.J. Green, it's just always been a tough road, because it's always been a deep room here. Has he played well when he's got his opportunities? Yes, but it might be the better opportunity for A.J. Green, not necessarily the Browns, that A.J. Green gets to go somewhere else where maybe they have a legitimate more chance to give him 30, 40 snaps a game.
Yeah, and again, it'll be interesting to see what develops with that cornerback situation. They have a lot of good ones. Jeff Lloyd and I are going to step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break. Back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Over the years, Kevin and Alex have had an offense that was based on creative control. Now that Watson has a full offseason and has the weapons at his disposal, I can now see this offense shift to having a more creative freedom type of offense like the Chiefs, to where Watson can come up with plays with the receivers and Stefanski, just like, how the Chiefs do with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Patrick was just making up plays on the run with his coaches, with the players. And, we have to do that as far as, and and the coaches are, I just want to say that the trust is strong. They just have to lean into it more with each other and just trust each other. That it's going to work.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Jeff, that's one of the things I'm interested to see. How much freedom does Kevin Stefanski give to Deshaun Watson? Hasn't worked with a guy that's had the skill set and is as talented. So I'm curious to see how that goes. I'm hoping he gives him a lot of freedom because that plays to his strengths.
Well, I think, in order to get the best of Deshaun Watson, you want to get him going early in games. You want to give him the feeling of, hey, if it's going to take you for 60 minutes versus whatever quarterback it is this week, a Joe Burrow, for example, who he's going to face twice, a Lamar Jackson, who he's going to face twice, you want to be able to get him going early. Look, and to have the ability to maybe say that Nick Chubb is the defensive afterthought is great. I mean, that is a tremendous, tremendous advantage if teams are going to be so winded from Deshaun Watson and the receivers and David Njoku running around all day long on him that all of a sudden, it's just an inside pistol handoff, and here comes Nick Chubb between, Joel Bitonio and obviously Ethan Posick and Wyatt Teller, and all of a sudden, he's screaming down through the hash marks, when people are bouncing off of him. It's just a great way to expose, obviously, defenses. But the key is going to be, to try to get Deshaun going. And it might be 6-7 passes, minimum first 2 drives. You want to get him going, feeling as good as he can, because that way I think you're going to get for Deshaun to just get back to the biggest comfort zone he's felt probably since 2020. And when you get guys truly comfortable, that's truly when you get to see basically them take everything out of the bag and basically give everything they have.
So this is from the Bleacher Report. Overhyped or underrated? Off-season buzz meter for potential NFL contenders. This from the Bleacher Report. Browns, underrated. On the field, Watson led the Houston Texans to the playoffs in 2 of the last 3 seasons after he finished his rookie campaign on injured reserve with a torn ACL. After missing 11 games in 2022, he'll have a full season with his teammates. The Browns' defense underachieved under Joe Woods. Jim Schwartz could get more out of that talented group. And again, I think nationally the Browns are being underrated. I think here there's a lot of expectations.
I think it's a mixture, honestly. I think, national-wise and around here, for Cleveland folks, you kind of get it. You've been down this road too many times before, and it's, you don't want to be essentially, Charlie Brown waiting for Lucy to pull the football out, away from you. Me, I'm extremely optimistic. I think this team, I don't understand why this team will not be good. The roster is loaded. If you really want to talk about, of these guys that are going to head down to the Greenbrier, West Virginia, about who assembles a final 53, I think we're probably good at about 50-51, and maybe there are a couple of questions after that as far as maybe the last 2. But this roster is, in fact, deep. It is, in fact, talented. You talk about the fact there are 6 wide receivers here who are capable probably of contributing this season, including rookie Cedric Tillman. The tight end room, you brought back Harrison Bryant just for the explicit purpose of here's a third tight end who brings us a receiving promise, a different aspect, just another weapon for Deshaun. It's hard for me to think that this team is not going to be successful. Look, there's ways things can fall apart here, but I got to base things on what I'm seeing at the current time. You can't say, oh, well, they're going to stink because they always stunk. That's not analysis. It's a guess. Or it's repeating history. My job is to analyze. And what I analyze of this current Cleveland Browns team as they are about to head down to West Virginia is that this roster looks loaded. And maybe the fact that Coach Kevin Stefanski is going to change up his offense a little bit probably isn't the worst thing in the world here. And maybe you would be doing that anyway after 3 seasons in the league and people having plenty of tape on you. Maybe now it's time to start, changing things up here a little bit, because teams and, other coaches, guys you're competing against kind of have a read on you, kind of have a tell on you. So to be able to change your offense to an upgrade of major proportions at the quarterback position, I just don't see how this doesn't work out for the Browns as far as being well in their favor.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, before I let you go, this is from Dog Pound Daily. 3 contract decisions that will pay off for the Browns. Number 1, doing what it takes to acquire Zadarius Smith. Ultimately, the Browns signed Smith to a 1-year deal worth over $11 million in total money, but they kicked a lot of that contract down the road via void years in the contract. 2, trading for Amari Cooper, restructuring his deal. After trading for Cooper, the Browns converted $18.88 million of Cooper's 2022 base salary into a signing bonus, created $15 million in cap space for him at the time. And number 3, extending David Njoku, signed him to a 4-year, $54 million plus deal in 2022. And again, all those really good moves by Andrew Berry, very savvy GM moves, as a matter of fact.
Well, when you talk about the 2 trades, and in both instances, and this is where it always gets tricky, oh, well, if we just let them release him, but now all of a sudden you're in this conglomerate of teams, similar to what happened with DeAndre Hopkins, and you get somebody that makes the guy an offer that you just were not going to go anywhere near monetarily. So you're able to find a way to get this deal for Cooper. You're able to find a way to get this deal for Zadarius Smith. So essentially you don't get in the after-released bidding war. And so for the Browns, both of those have obviously worked out extremely well. And to think about it, we're talking about a team, obviously at the time the Browns, still possessed first-round picks. But, with the thought they were going to go get a big-time quarterback, how are we going to get a big-time wide receiver if we don't have a first-round pick or a second-round pick? Zadarius Smith, you had already gone through the draft. And again, you had traded back. You started drafting again, obviously in the 3rd round. They felt comfortable with the way the DN room was, but here was a guy who has leadership. Here is a guy that has been a playoff player with the Ravens. He has been a playoff player with the Packers. He's been a playoff player with the Minnesota Vikings, and starting to get those type of guys into the room, guys who have expectations that the season doesn't end the first week after New Year's Day.
Jeff Lloyd, Locked On Browns podcast, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jeff.
Always a pleasure, Dave. Everybody, let's enjoy the week. It's time. Let's go.
That's right. Saturday, the first practice out Greenbrier in West Virginia. Check out Jeff Lloyd. Always really good stuff. Locked On Browns podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dogs Podcast Network, 216 straight ahead. We continue talking Browns.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. A former wide receiver Greg Jennings was on FS1's First Things First, talking about teams going from worst to first in their division.
I like the Cleveland Browns. I like the situation that they're in because of the division that they're in. This division, they kind of beat up on one another. When you look at the Cleveland Browns, we break the season down into 6 games, and those are the 6 games that Deshaun Watson played. If you look at these numbers, the first 4 games that Deshaun Watson came out with the Cleveland Browns, we got to give him a pass. He was clearly rusty. When you look at the numbers right there, total yards per game, 200. He couldn't throw a touchdown to save his life, was turning the ball over, 69.3% passer rating. But those last 2 games, it started to give me a little glimpse of what may be to come. And in a division where there was one clear outright team that was just better than everybody else, and that was the Cincinnati Bengals. You obviously improved with the Ravens, but the Cleveland Browns, you got to believe if Deshaun Watson is able to get anywhere close to what he was in Houston with the talent that they're bringing in, Elijah Moore, obviously Amari Cooper, I believe he's the #1 guy. I know he is. The defense that they have, they run the ball very well. They got a chance to go from worst to first.
Well, let's welcome in Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dawgs podcast, as well as Network 216. Tyler, the quarterback rankings, I did not realize that. So it does show some progression from Deshaun Watson. I thought there were times in probably every game but the first game where you went, oh, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. And when you see just a little bit of the glimpses to what Deshaun Watson had as an elite level quarterback in Houston, the Washington game really comes to mind for me. You saw him make quite a bit of throws in that game. They're like, okay, this is what we traded for. And with Greg Jennings, it's kind of nice seeing some of these national analysts that are like, okay, Deshaun Watson played bad because he hasn't played for this long. Not that, oh, well, Deshaun Watson, he might not return to form. It's nice seeing some of those national people that say, oh, Deshaun Watson, well, if he does this, because, I mean, he's already proven at an elite level, this is what he can do. I mean, it's lovely to see, and I do agree with him. Going from worst to first is very possible in the AFC North, but like we've talked about many times, the level of competition in that division, you could make a case for any team, the Ravens, Steelers, Bengals, all of them have a case for why they will win the division or why they will get a wild card spot. And it's just going to come down to, I think, most importantly, obviously Deshaun Watson's a big part of it, but which team can stay as healthy as possible. There are always going to be injuries, but which star players can stay healthy, that's really going to determine who ends up probably winning this division, because they're just going to continuously beat up on one another. And, I mean, 10, 11 wins probably is going to win this division.
All right, so there's some news about DeAndre Hopkins. Titans are giving him 2-year, $26 million deal worth up to $32 million with incentives. This, according to a source, gets $12 million the first year with a chance of getting up to $15 million. That's via Ian Rappaport. There were also reports that the Patriots offer was $4 million a year with $10 million potential in incentives. So, bottom line, it only takes one team. The Titans were that team that were giving him Odell Beckham Jr. money. Signing with the Titans, not a surprise. I don't blame him for taking the money.
I don't blame him for taking the money either. And when you talk about the offer the Patriots had compared to the Titans, I mean, players can justify however they want that they want to win games, so on and so forth, but it always seemed like he wanted the Odell Beckham Jr. type money, and he did get that from Tennessee. What's crazy is he still didn't get as much as Odell Beckham Jr., which is really hard to believe considering OBJ is coming off another torn ACL injury. But, I mean, you look at the Titans and bringing in DeAndre Hopkins, it gives them a #1 receiver because really all they had was Treylon Burks at the position. But a lot of Browns fans, some out there are kind of upset the Browns didn't sign Hopkins or offer more money. The reality is there was never a reason to do that. You have Amari Cooper at near 1,200 yards receiving last year while playing a good portion of that year injured. Donovan Peoples-Jones, over 800 yards, took another step forward. David Njoku had over 600 yards receiving as a tight end. You bring in Elijah Moore, who's going to play a huge role for the Browns this season, is going to be a starter for them. And you see the potential that he has at the position, how much they're going to work to get him the ball. You bring in Marquise Goodwin, who's a consistent deep threat and has proven that in the NFL. You add Cedric Tillman. The Browns still really believe in David Bell, and they should, because he was the fourth best receiver among getting open around all the NFL rookies last year. And that's, of course, with Garrett Wilson, Drake London, and all of them. So just keep in mind, the Browns never had a need for DeAndre Hopkins. It would have been awesome to get DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, who wouldn't want to add a former All-Pro wide receiver that's played with Deshaun Watson? But at the end of the day, the Browns didn't need to do it because of the talent they already have at the position and on the roster.
Yeah, the price tag as well. You know, I like DeAndre Hopkins a whole lot more at $6 million for the Browns than I do at $12 million for the Browns. All right. Longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi. What he saw this offseason, his grade for the Browns is from ESPN Cleveland.
I'd be close to an A. Definitely a high B or low A. You know, if you start with the hiring of Jim Schwartz, which was in January, and go right through the signing of Zadarius Smith, I thought it was very productive. And Riz, it just adds to my belief that there's really no excuses this year for anything less than competing for the division title. And by competing, I mean playing right to the last, 2 games. It's still there for him.
Again, that's Tony Grossi, and the reason I play that, Tyler, I think he's as good as there is, along with Mary Kay Cabot as a beat reporter, and I agree with him. They should win. There are not excuses anymore.
No excuses. You're going to have a full season with Deshaun Watson as your quarterback. Well, I mean, that's the plan. Injuries can always happen, but the plan is Deshaun Watson having a full season with him as your quarterback. You expect him to take that next step and lead this team to the playoffs. It's, of course, not all on Watson now. A lot of it is because he is the quarterback, and normally if you have a Pro Bowl level NFL quarterback, you're going to make the playoffs. But the rest of the roster has to be solid, and the Browns have done a great job. Andrew Berry has adding talent to the roster, given the resources available to him, adding Elijah Moore, basically giving up nothing to acquire Zadarius Smith, the best pass rusher Myles Garrett has ever played with. You bring in Jim Schwartz, who has that experience of leading an NFL defense, has won a Super Bowl, knows what it takes to get that done. You bring in Bubba Ventrone, who I think that's going to be a very underrated addition, and is going to make the Browns one of the better special teams units in the league, as opposed to the last couple of years being near the bottom of the league in that category. It's all there. There's no excuse at this time. There's no excuses. Last year, the excuse, Deshaun Watson is going to miss 11 games. That's a very valid reason. Baker Mayfield had his shoulder injury. That's a very valid reason. There's no excuses anymore. It's time to go out for those results, to prove those results correct. And Tony is right. They should be competing for a division title. And that's not to say winning it. I personally believe they should win it. That should be the ultimate goal. But like he mentioned also, you want to come down to that final day and be competing for that division title. And I see the Browns doing that, and anything less than that, not only competing for a division title, but let alone you better be in the wild card hunt, because anything less than that, there are going to be a lot of changes after the season.
Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dawgs podcast, as well as Network 216, and I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. We head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dawgs podcast, as well as Network 216. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. Every season, there is one or two teams that emerge and make a surprise run to the playoffs. Who do you think can be those teams? Give me one in the AFC and one in the NFC, other than the Browns. My picks are AFC Denver and NFC Falcons. What do you think? Thanks.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Tyler, the Broncos I agree with. Just Sean Payton, he'll find a way with Russell Wilson. I'm going to go way off the beaten path and say the Bears in the NFC. I like Justin Fields, so I'm going to go with the Bears and the Broncos.
Yeah, I like those for sure. I think for the AFC, what I'm going to go with, and this is going to be unpopular, but I do think that given how weak the AFC South is, if Anthony Richardson can be solid, learning under Shane Steichen, who has worked very well, of course, with Jalen Hurts and got him to where he needs to be, I think the Colts are a dark horse in the AFC South because I do think Jacksonville is a good team, but I don't think that they're going to head to this elite level that some analysts out there are saying. So I would say the Colts in the AFC, and I think from the NFC, who I'm going to go with, I think I agree with you too. I really like the Bears and Justin Fields. They put in a lot more talent around him with DJ Moore. They brought in Tremaine Edmonds. They've had a ton of cap space to work with and bring in some high-quality free agents to really boost that roster. The Packers, they lost Aaron Rodgers. The Vikings, it's hard to really know if the Vikings are going to continue to lead that division moving forward. I know they've lost a lot of talent there. The Lions also, are they going to be consistent again and take that next step? So there's a lot of questions in the NFC North. And if Justin Fields can take that next step as a passer, I think they have a chance for a playoff spot this year.
All right, this is from the Bleacher Report. Best and worst case scenario for each NFL division in 2023. Best case for the team, so 4-team free-for-all. The wild card in this equation is the Cleveland Browns. On paper, Browns have the firepower to compete for a playoff spot. If Watson can turn back the clock to 2020, things could get interesting very quickly. Worst case, backslide at the top. If the Steelers can't produce enough offense to be a legitimate contender, or Watson can't keep the Browns in the hunt for the division, that would end up that wouldn't be the end of the world. As a matter of fact, it wouldn't be at all that unexpected. However, if the Ravens and or Bengals falter, that's another story. I don't think Watson, again, people are going to get sick of hearing this. Watson just needs to be a competent NFL quarterback. You know, make plays when the game is on the line. If he does that, Browns are a playoff team.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the quotes that really caught my eye is Watson can't keep the Browns in the hunt for the division. That wouldn't be the end of the world. As a matter of fact, it wouldn't be all that unexpected. Deshaun Watson has proven that with talent around him, like just even decent talent around him, he can lead a team to the playoffs. I mean, he did it with the Houston Texans. The reason 2020 was so bad is they traded DeAndre Hopkins. They lost a lot of high-end talent under Bill O'Brien, and it really went south quick. But Deshaun Watson has proven he can lead a team to the playoffs. I mean, he's done it with the Texans, and the Texans at the time when he did lead them to the playoffs were not like one of the best overall rosters in the NFL. So, you know, Watson doesn't need to be that all-pro level top 5 quarterback. I still think he's going to be top 10 level, but even if he is just top 15, I do agree the Browns are a playoff team because there's just so much other talent around them. And if that defense takes the next step that we think they will, there's no reason why the Browns wouldn't have a chance to win, not only win the division, but at the very least just get a wild card spot. But when you mention the Steelers and then even the Ravens and Bengals, that's where it would be more interesting. I think the Steelers, for me, as of right now, I think are the 4th best team in the division. But at the same time, they always, under Mike Tomlin, find a way to be there at the end. And then the Ravens and Bengals. I mean, the Ravens bringing back Lamar, so of course they're going to be in it. And then the Bengals, as long as you have Joe Burrow running the show with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, they're kind of the class of the AFC North right now. So the Browns have to go in and dethrone them from that role.
All right, training camp gets underway. First practice in West Virginia Saturday. Let me ask you this. As training camp, as we start hearing stuff, what do you need to hear to feel good about the Browns? And then I'll also ask you, what, if you hear this, you're like, ooh, this is not good?
What I need to hear, at least on the offensive side of the ball, is that there's good communication going on between Kevin Stefanski and Deshaun Watson because they are putting in pretty much a brand new offense is what Deshaun Watson made it sound like when he spoke to the media last. So I need to hear that. What would concern me is if they're having a lot of issues with communication, getting guys lined up. Maybe another one, I don't know if we'll hear this, but a big thing when playing under a mobile quarterback is holding your blocks longer, receivers getting open off the scramble drill. I think that's another big one. So receivers not quitting on their routes. If you hear anything like that, that is definitely a little concerning. And then on the defensive side, what I need to hear, just that everyone is picking up Jim Schwartz's defense quickly and the way that he is running the defense. We heard Greg Newsome, Denzel Ward talk about it, how they're very encouraged by it. They really like what Jim Schwartz is doing. I need to hear more along those lines. Then the only thing I think I would be concerned with, at least on the defensive side of the ball, is some of the defensive tackles not really performing up to the standards that they need to. And I don't know if we're really going to hear much on that, but if we start hearing reports that outside Dalvin Tomlinson, defensive tackles aren't really looking that great in training camp, that's going to worry me, because the same thing happened last year and then the Browns got gashed on the ground. So those two things I would really watch for on the defensive side.
Agree with you wholeheartedly. Want to hear how much fun the defense is having playing in Jim Schwartz's system. We heard it, and if we continue to hear that, I think good things are ahead for this defense. Tyler, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tyler.
My pleasure, Dave. Thank you very much.
Tyler Johnson, make sure you check him out, Faithful Dogs Podcast, as well as Network 216. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.